You played 3 years in the pros, 7 years on the national team. You were on the 95 World Cup team, the 96 Olympic team as an alternate. And once you come up to that level where you're really kind of funneling up to the top tier of talent, what do you think you maybe possessed that some of the other girls on your college level team didn't?
I think there's a lot of athletes that have potential to play in college or potential to play on a national team. But the reason they don't is they may not want it as much. They don't have the mentality to go after it, and they don't have the consistency in their training habits and their attitude and how they react to setbacks. And those are things I definitely had. I had some injuries along the way in my career. In college, I made the national team as a sophomore in college, but it wasn't right away. It wasn't my very first camp, and all of a sudden it happened. I actually made the national team after not being invited into a camp, and I wasn't supposed to be there, but a player got injured, so I got a late invite. And those are the situations where I reacted well to something that was potentially negative, and then all of a sudden I'm in that camp and playing with nothing to lose and competing, and I make my very first international trip on the national team. So I think along the way I just showed that consistency, and I showed that I had the passion for it.
So what have you seen maybe different that when we were younger and we played sports, different in the kids today, because you're around a lot of them, recruiting them at UCLA?
I think the kids today aren't as able to handle adversity or failures. I think parents need to let them go through some things and figure it out on their own. And they're a little bit more coddled for sure. And we may call that they have a softer mentality. But we need adversity is okay and failure is okay, and they can react to that. And how is their attitude going to be? And they need to know that how they react to something sets them on a new course. And if it's negative, it's not going to be the course they want.
Great, thanks. How has youth soccer changed from when you were a player until now?
Well, youth soccer is a beast. I mean, there's the club system, the ECNL, the AYSO. There's U.S. Soccer, all the development academies, and ID camps, and there's just so much going on now in the youth system. So I understand why athletes nowadays don't find time to play multiple sports, but there's also so many players. The parity out there and the amount of athletes playing, little girls and teenage girls playing soccer is through the roof, and it's even more competitive. And you really have to find what is your niche? What is something that sets you apart? What can you do on the field if you do want to play in college? It's tough. But the great thing for women's soccer is we have over 300 Division I teams alone, and then you have Division II, Division III, junior colleges, NAIA. So if someone wants to play at the college level, there's quite a few options.
And what are you looking for at UCLA that maybe sets one athlete apart from another? Like if they have comparable skills, what are you looking for when you're recruiting?
Athleticism is a big part of it. They have to play at a certain speed. The speed of play at our level, youth national team levels, is a lot higher than a club. So their skill set, their ability to read the game, their tactical knowledge, all those things are qualities that we pick out on our recruits. Sometimes it's hard to know. If you only see a kid in a couple club games, and you don't get a feel for how they might organize if they're a defender, or how they might work with a certain player up top as a forward. You really have to look for certain things on how their movement off the ball, and how they deal with a teammate that might give them a bad pass. How is their attitude? Are they making the players around them better, or are they making the players around them worse? Because they're sometimes. If a player is really good and they are too demanding on their teammates, those teammates kind of have a fear of failure, and they don't help them. You look at a player like Lionel Messi from Argentina. Everyone in the field is better because he's on the field. He could be as demanding as anybody, I'm sure, because he's the best player on the planet. But he raises the level of every one of his teammates, and that's what we look for. Who makes those players around them better.
What's the most difficult thing about being a student athlete?
Well, a student athlete really has huge time demands. It's like holding a job while being in college. So whether it's getting treatment, going to the training room, sport or strength and conditioning, their actual practice time. We have video sessions. We have academic meetings. So there's a lot going on for the athletes, and they really have to prepare themselves, be organized, and know that they have to sacrifice some things socially. The other side of it is they come to UCLA or a top college potentially as a big fish in a small pond where they were in their club or high school, and now they're out of school where they're not the big fish anymore, and they have to learn how to swim upstream, so to speak, and fight for their position. And whether it's a starting position or even a spot on the roster, sometimes just to travel, they have a hard time with that sometimes, knowing that it takes some time, and they just can't show up and think it's going to happen for them just because of who they were as a club player. They really have to work for it.
And is that a large part of what you and your coaches have to do, is manage those egos per se?
You definitely have to manage a roster. And the more talented teams you have, there's some players that are sitting out that could probably start at other schools. So you have to manage the rosters. We start this process back when we were recruiting them. We're very honest about the competitive nature of our program and what it takes to play here. And honestly, some players have said no to UCLA because they don't want it. They don't want that competitiveness day in, day out. They don't want to have to fight for a starting spot or even have to fight to travel. And that's okay. If someone wants to go be the big fish in a small pond somewhere and they know that about themselves, that's okay. And there's some that are a little bit afraid of the challenge. And those are the players, honestly, then it's not the right fit for them, because if they're not up for the challenge, then UCLA is not the home for them.
Taking that to sort of the youth level, there's all these parents that club hop. So they think their kid should be a forward, or their kid is not the star. Is that advisable or not? I mean, I'm sure it's sort of case by case, but will you be able to recognize a person not a star at a very solid team? I guess that's what they're all looking for eventually, would be someone like you to spot them.
We're very wary of the players that have hopped from club to club to club, because that means they're going to be a player that most likely transfers from one college to the next. They're not going to be happy where they are. They always are looking for the next situation that's going to fulfill them. And they have to know that sometimes they have to stick to it where they are and try to make it work. I get it sometimes for travel purposes. Maybe they change, or maybe they were on a team that was lower level and then they kind of got discovered, and that's happened before. We see some players that are on some lower level club teams, and we help them find a better club that we think will be more of a challenge for them, playing with better players on a daily basis. There's some players that can't play an ECNL club because they do play other sports, and sometimes they don't allow that, or there's not time for it. So sometimes those players are playing on a lesser club, but they still are good players. They just they have to find a way to get the training they need on a daily basis, and sometimes that's hard to do when you're playing multiple sports.
But you can still find them, right?
We can still find them. Yeah, we can still find them. It's harder. It's definitely harder, but we can still find them, and we have found them. There's a player at UCLA right now that no one knew about till really her junior year.
Okay, Amanda, what are 3 things that you wish you could get out to all parents today of youth athletes? What are 3 things you wish they would know?
I think the first thing is probably the biggest one for me, is let them fail. It's okay to have adversity. It's okay to have some failure, and then have to deal with it. So don't coddle them. Let them figure out some things on their own. 2, if they want to play multiple sports, or if they need to take a break, be really supportive of that and encourage it's kind of what they want. And 3, it's okay not to be in control. I know it's hard. You're on the sideline and you feel like there's nothing you can control, so you're very vocal and you want to critique or yell at the refs. But it's okay not to be in control, and just take a step back and let let it happen, and just tell your kids you love to watch them play.
For parents, we're on that hamster wheel all the time trying to keep up with the Joneses, but also wanting to be that, to be able to say, I love to watch you play and leave it at that. Is that even possible in today's competitive youth sports world?
I think it's possible. I think the parents need to take a step back sometimes and realize the coach is there for a reason. They're in control of the situation, and they need to, I guess, give some more trust to the situation, and be okay with taking a step back and knowing it's okay to push your kids at the right time, or you want to be encouraging, but not critical. I think leave that again to the coaches. And I don't ever remember my parents along the way saying anything negative about the way I played, ever. They could have. I just don't remember it. And I think you tend to remember the negative things. I remember my dad helping me shoot baskets at the playground. I remember my mom bringing her good friend to watch me play soccer, and they'd rather be shopping. They're sitting on the sideline cleaning out their purses, and just the presence of having your parents there supporting you means a lot. And I know that, and it doesn't really matter in the end what they say, and saying, because you don't want them to be all about fluff either, and knowing you didn't play well, and they come over and say, oh, good job, and you're like, no, it wasn't. Like, you don't want to hear that either. And I think just saying, hey, I just love being here, and I love watching you play is important, and leave the analysis up to the coaches, and be okay with that.